In 1965, a steakhouse in Kansas City served a side dish so popular that regulars ordered it before they ever opened the menu. It cost the kitchen 11 cents to make. Today, it does not exist. Number 9 on this list was killed by a freezer truck. Number 3 required a rolling cart, a raw egg, and a waiter with nerve. These 25 side dishes made American steakhouses legendary until the chains replaced every single one with something cheaper. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down. Number 25. Hot popovers with whipped butter. Before your steak ever arrived, before you even ordered, a basket landed on the table holding popovers so hot you could not touch them. Eggs, milk, flour, salt, 4 ingredients whipped into a thin batter and poured into blazing hot cast iron cups, where the steam inside blew them up like golden balloons. The outside shattered. The inside was custard soft and nearly hollow, a warm cave waiting for butter. Steakhouses in the Midwest serve them by the thousands because the ingredients cost pennies and the effect was pure theater. A dozen popovers cost the kitchen maybe 15 cents in 1962. When the chains arrived, popovers were the first casualty. They cannot sit under a heat lamp. They collapse within 20 minutes of leaving the oven, which means somebody has to actually bake them fresh all night long. The chains handed you a plastic-wrapped dinner roll instead and called it bread service. Number 24. Broiled garlic cheese toast. Not garlic bread from a foil bag. This was thick-cut white bread, brushed heavy with melted butter and fresh garlic, blanketed with grated cheese, and run under a broiler until the edges charred and the cheese bubbled into brown blisters. Texas steakhouses made it famous, and every roadside beef house from Amarillo to Bakersfield copied it. The bread came from the local bakery that morning. The butter was real. You could smell a table's order of cheese toast from across the dining room, and half the time the next table ordered it just from the smell. The whole thing cost the kitchen about a nickel a slice in 1958 and sold for a quarter. Pure profit, pure pleasure. Then the chains figured out you could buy pre-buttered frozen Texas toast by the case, thaw it, and pass it off as the same thing. It is not the same thing. Frozen garlic toast tastes like the freezer it came from. The original tasted like a Saturday night when your dad wore his good jacket. Number 23. Cottage fries. Before the shoestring fry conquered America, the steakhouse potato of choice was the cottage fry. Thick rounds of russet potato, sliced by hand on a mandolin, soaked in cold water, then fried until the edges frilled up golden and crisp while the centers stayed creamy. Some houses fried them in beef tallow, the rendered fat trimmed from their own steaks, which gave the potatoes a savory depth that vegetable oil has never once matched. A 50-pound sack of potatoes cost about $2 in 1960 and covered a full weekend of service. Cottage fries could not be rushed and could not be frozen, and that combination signed their death warrant. When frozen fry distributors showed up in the late 1960s promising identical fries in 90 seconds with no prep labor, owners did the math and surrendered. The tallow went next, swapped for cheap liquid oil in the 1980s. We traded the best fried potato this country ever produced for consistency and a lower labor bill. Ask anyone over 70. They remember. Number 22. Harvard beets. On the vegetable line of every white tablecloth steakhouse in the Northeast sat a steam pan of beets glowing like rubies. Sliced beets simmered in a glossy, sweet and sour sauce of sugar, vinegar, and cornstarch until they shined like they had been lacquered. The sharp vinegar cut straight through a rich ribeye, which is exactly why the pairing worked, and exactly what a modern menu consultant would never understand. A number 10 can of beets cost the kitchen under 40 cents and produced 30 servings. Legend says the dish took its name from the crimson of Harvard's football jerseys. And true or not, the beets sat on every steakhouse menu from Boston to Cleveland for 50 years. Then the chains built their salad bars, and cooked vegetables with actual sauces vanished in favor of cold bins of shredded carrot. Harvard beets did not fade because people stopped liking them. They faded because nobody under 40 was ever given the chance to try them. Number 21. Marinated cucumber and onion salad. Every supper club and steakhouse in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa kept a crock of this in the walk-in. Paper-thin cucumbers and sliced sweet onions drowned in vinegar, water, sugar, salt, and black pepper, sometimes with a splash of cream stirred in the Scandinavian way. It sat overnight until the cucumbers went limp and translucent and soaked up all that bright, sharp brine. Served ice-cold in a little glass dish beside a sizzling strip steak, it was the single most refreshing thing on the table. The whole crock cost the kitchen under $1 and lasted 3 days of service. This was the kind of side that never appeared in an ad, because the regulars would have rioted without it. When the chains standardized their menus out of a corporate binder, regional dishes like this one were deleted with a single memo. 100 years of Midwest table tradition, gone in a print run. Number 20. Corn O'Brien. Sweet corn sautéed in butter with diced red and green bell peppers and onion, seasoned with salt and enough black pepper to make it interesting. That was Corn O'Brien, and from the 1940s through the 1970s, it sat next to more American steaks than any vegetable except the potato. The peppers made it look festive. Red and green confetti scattered through the gold, and the butter made it taste like a holiday. Cooks made it from fresh corn in summer and canned corn all winter, and with enough butter, nobody could tell the difference. A serving cost the house maybe 6 cents. The chains replaced it with a scoop of plain frozen corn. No peppers, no onion, no butter worth mentioning, dropped from a bag into a steamer. Same vegetable. None of the point. Corn O'Brien was proof that a cook cared enough to dice a pepper. Frozen corn is proof that nobody in the building has to know how. Number 19. Green beans. Almondine. Say it out loud and you can hear the 1960s. Green beans, blanched until just tender, tossed in a skillet with browned butter and toasted slivered almonds until the whole pan smelled nutty and rich. In an era when a French word on the menu let you charge 15 cents more, almondine was the working man's taste of the continent. The beans snapped. The almonds crunched. The browned butter tied it to the steak beside it like they were made for each other, because they were. Almonds cost real money, about 70 cents a pound in 1965, which is exactly why the dish felt special. And exactly why the chains cut it. Corporate kitchens kept the beans and deleted the almonds and the browned butter, leaving a pile of plain steamed green beans that tasted like a hospital tray. Here is the quiet tragedy. Almondine takes 4 minutes and 1 pan. It was never hard. It was never even expensive. Not really. It was just 1 step more than the minimum. And the minimum is where the chains planted their flag. First pattern break. Here is what actually happened to the American steakhouse, and it happened fast. In 1965, a steak dinner was scratch-cooked by a crew of 6 in the back. By 1985, budget steakhouse chains had spread to every interstate exit in the country, and their genius was not the steak. It was the supply chain. Frozen fries, bagged salad, powdered soup base, pre-portioned everything, shipped from central warehouses so that a teenager could plate a dinner in 90 seconds with 0 training. Food costs dropped. Prices dropped. Independent steakhouses, the ones making popovers and cottage fries at $4 a plate, could not compete with a $2.99 steak dinner, and they died by the thousands. The chains did not beat the old steakhouses on flavor. They beat them on spreadsheets. And every dish on this list was a line item somebody crossed out. Number 18. Duchess potatoes. Mashed potatoes enriched with egg yolks and butter. loaded into a piping bag and swirled into elegant golden rosettes that were brushed with more butter and browned in the oven until the ridges crisped. They looked like something from a Paris hotel, and they sat next to a T-bone in Toledo. The egg yolks made the mash rich and made it hold its shape, so every rosette came out with crunchy browned edges and a creamy middle. This was anniversary food, the dish that told your wife the extra $2 was worth it. What Duchess potatoes actually cost was skill, a cook who could handle a piping bag during a Saturday rush. And skilled labor is the one ingredient chains refuse to buy. They replaced Duchess potatoes with instant mash from a box, whipped with warm water, scooped with an ice cream scoop. One scoop, dead center of the plate, a sad beige planet. We went from rosettes to scoops in one generation and told ourselves it was progress. Number 17, hot cinnamon apples. The budget steakhouses of the 1960s and the 1970s actually invented some glories of their own before they cheapened everything. And this was one. Spiced apple rings, glowing red, warm and soft, served in a little dish right beside your chopped steak. Sweet, cinnamon heavy, a dessert hiding on the dinner plate. Kids begged for them. Adults pretended to order them for the kids. The apples cost the house about 4 cents a serving out of a giant jar. Steakhouses across the South served fried apples the same way, cooked down in butter, brown sugar and cinnamon until they nearly collapsed into sauce, a tradition straight out of Appalachian farm kitchens. Then the accountants tightened the menus in the 1990s, and warm apples disappeared almost everywhere. Ask anyone who ate at a roadside steakhouse as a child in 1974 what they remember. It is not the steak, it is the apples. We let the accountants take the apples. Number 16, creamed pearl onions. This dish survived on steakhouse menus for the better part of a century, and your great-grandfather would have considered a prime rib without it incomplete. Tiny pearl onions, peeled by hand, one by some poor prep cook with watering eyes, then simmered in a silky cream sauce spiked with nutmeg and white pepper. The onions turned sweet and mellow in the cream, little pearls that popped between your teeth and flooded your mouth with sauce. It was the traditional partner to roast beef going back to the 1800s, served at holiday tables and chop houses alike. The problem was never popularity. The problem was those onions do not peel themselves, and a gallon of cream sauce needs a cook who can make a cream sauce. By the 1980s, creamed onions had retreated to Thanksgiving, and by the 2000s, they had mostly vanished from there too. The chains never even attempted them. There is no frozen bag version worth eating, and that, in the end, is the highest compliment a dish can receive. Number 15, scalloped tomatoes. Canned tomatoes, torn bread, butter, sugar, salt, and onion, layered into a casserole and baked until the top browned and the inside turned into something between a stew and a stuffing. Old-line steakhouses and chop houses on the East Coast served scalloped tomatoes beside broiled steaks for decades, and the pairing was smarter than it sounds. The acid of the tomatoes cut the fat of the beef. The buttered bread soaked up the tomato liquid and turned rich and savory. A whole pan cost the kitchen maybe 30 cents. It used up yesterday's bread and turned a 10-cent can of tomatoes into a side that people specifically requested. And grand old steakhouses in Manhattan and Philadelphia kept it on the menu into the 1980s. But scalloped tomatoes look humble, and the chains were selling the appearance of abundance. A brown casserole of bread and tomatoes did not photograph well, so one of the best pairings in American food quietly left the table. Number 14, rice pilaf made with real stock. There was a time when the rice next to your steak actually tasted like something. Long grain rice toasted in butter with minced onion until the grains turned golden, then simmered not in water, but in real chicken or beef stock, the kind made from actual bones in the back of the house. Sometimes broken pieces of vermicelli were toasted along with it, the San Francisco style that a famous boxed mix later imitated. Every grain came out separate, glossy and savory, seasoned from the inside out. Steakhouses offered pilaf as the sophisticated alternative to the baked potato, and through the 1960s and 70s, it held its ground. Then the chains discovered rice made from powdered base and hot water, or worse, par-cooked rice from a bag, and the pilaf that remained on menus became a beige filler that tasted faintly of salt and nothing else. Here is the thing about real pilaf. The recipe is not a secret. It is toast, pour, simmer, wait. What died was not knowledge. What died was the stock pot and everything downstream of it. Second pattern, break. Now here is the part the chains would rather you not think about. When a restaurant makes creamed spinach from scratch, the money you pay goes to spinach, cream, butter, and a cook's wages. When a chain serves creamed spinach from a frozen boil-in bag, most of your money goes to a food processing conglomerate, a trucking company, and a freezer. Same menu line, same price, completely different economy underneath. The great trick of the 1970s and 80s was convincing America the two versions were the same dish. Words like homestyle and signature and classic appeared on menus at the exact moment the homemade versions disappeared from the kitchens. Read that again. The language got more nostalgic as the food got more industrial. That was not an accident. That was the whole strategy. Number 13. Hand-breaded onion rings. Real steakhouse onion rings were a project. Thick slices of sweet onion separated into rings, soaked in buttermilk for an hour, dredged in seasoned flour, dipped in batter, and dropped into hot fat to order. They came out shaggy and golden. The coating fused to the onion, so that when you bit down, you got crunch and sweet onion together instead of pulling the whole onion out in one rubbery rope. A mountain of them arrived stacked on a spindle or piled high on a platter for the whole table. Onions cost 7 cents a pound in 1960. The entire tower cost the house maybe a quarter and sold for $1.50, and it was worth every penny because somebody stood there and made it. Frozen onion rings arrived in the 1970s. Uniform, pale, coated in a crust, engineered to survive a freezer, a truck, and a heat lamp. They pull out in one rubbery rope every single time. That rope is the taste of the spreadsheet winning. Number 12. The French fried onion loaf. For a few glorious decades, certain steakhouses served onion rings by the loaf. Hundreds of thin, battered onion strings pressed into a bread pan and deep-fried into a single golden brick, turned out onto a platter, and dropped in the middle of the table like a trophy. Texas steakhouses made it famous in the 1960s, and the idea spread across the Sun Belt like wildfire because it was cheap to make and looked absolutely unhinged in the best possible way. 2 onions, some batter, 1 fryer, and you had a centerpiece that made every other table jealous. Families tore into it with their hands. There was no polite way to eat an onion loaf, and that was the point. It turned dinner into an event. The loaf required a kitchen willing to babysit a deep fryer for 8 minutes, and chain kitchens are not willing to babysit anything. A few survivors still serve it, and people drive hours for it, which tells you everything. Americans did not stop wanting the onion loaf. The onion loaf was taken from them. Number 11. Mushrooms sautéed in sherry butter. Order the smothered steak at a proper mid-century steakhouse, and the kitchen went to work with a skillet, a pound of butter, and a bottle of cooking sherry. Fresh mushrooms, quartered, seared, hard in the butter until their edges browned, then hit with a pour of sherry that flamed and sizzled and cooked down into a glaze that clung to every cap. What remained was a deep, winey, savory richness that made a sirloin taste like it cost twice as much. The whole side cost the house perhaps 15 cents. Waiters upsold it by name sherried mushrooms because the word sherry alone sounded like money in 1963. The chain version, when it exists at all, is mushrooms held in a steam well, gray and slick, poured from a pouch that has never met a skillet or a bottle of anything. Butter, mushrooms, sherry, heat. 4 things. The chains got rid of 3 of them and kept the mushrooms, and then wondered why nobody orders mushrooms anymore. Number 10. Asparagus with hollandaise. In the spring, when asparagus came into season, the good steakhouses announced it like news, because it was news. Fat spears, peeled, poached until just tender, laid across the plate and draped with real hollandaise. Egg yolks whisked with butter and lemon over a double boiler by a cook who had ruined 100 batches learning how not to. Hollandaise breaks if you rush it and cannot be held for more than an hour or 2, which made it a badge of honor. A steakhouse with real hollandaise was a steakhouse with a real cook. The dish sold for 75 cents, and men ordered it to show their dates they knew things. The chains tried powdered hollandaise from an envelope, whisked with warm water, a sauce the color of caution tape that tasted of citric acid and regret. Eventually, most of them dropped the pretense and started serving asparagus naked, or dropped the asparagus entirely. Broccoli is cheaper. Broccoli is always cheaper. Number 9. Real hash browns and Lyonnaise potatoes. Here is the one the freezer truck killed. The classic steakhouses gave you a choice of potatoes, and the connoisseurs' picks were hash browns, shredded fresh and pressed into a buttered skillet until they formed a crackling golden cake, or Lyonnaise potatoes, sliced spuds, tossed with caramelized onions and butter until the edges frizzled. Both required a cook standing at a stove with a spatula and patience, working from whole potatoes that arrived in 50-pound sacks, costing a couple of dollars. Then the frozen potato industry perfected its product, and by the 1970s, the trucks were delivering it to every restaurant loading dock in America. The skillet cake gave way to a pale, pre-formed patty. The Lyonnaise disappeared entirely because caramelizing onions takes 40 minutes, and 40 minutes is a firing offense in a chain kitchen. One supplier executive reportedly called frozen potatoes the greatest labor-saving product in restaurant history. He was right. It saved labor. It just spent flavor to do it. Number 8. Spinach salad with hot bacon dressing. This one arrived at your table still making noise. Fresh spinach leaves, sliced mushrooms, hard-boiled egg, and red onion in a bowl. And then the waiter poured over a dressing made of hot bacon fat, vinegar, sugar, and mustard, straight from the pan, so the leaves hissed and wilted slightly the moment it hit them. In the better houses, they finished it tableside, sometimes flaming it with a splash of brandy, and the whole dining room turned to watch. The salad was warm, smoky, sharp, and rich all at once. A farm dish from Pennsylvania Dutch country dressed up in a dinner jacket. Bacon fat was free. Spinach cost a dime. The drama cost nothing at all. The salad bar murdered this dish. Once the chains installed 40 feet of cold bins and told America that salad meant serving yourself. The salad is a cooked, composed, poured at the table event, simply evaporated. We traded fire and bacon for a sneeze guard. Third pattern break. Here is what nobody says out loud. The salad bar, the thing the budget steakhouse chains were proudest of, the innovation they put in every TV commercial, was a cost-cutting device wearing a generosity costume. All you can eat sounds like abundance. What it actually did was fire the salad maker. No more composed salads, no more tableside dressings, no more cook tossing your wedge to order. The customer became the unpaid labor, and the ingredient list quietly slid toward the cheapest possible items. Iceberg, shredded carrot, croutons from a bag, dressing from a 5-gallon bucket. People lined up for it. People loved it. And the entire craft of the steakhouse salad, a craft that took decades to build, was dismantled in about 10 years, with the customers cheering. That is how you cheapen a national institution. You do not sneak it past people. You sell it to them as an upgrade. Number 7. Au gratin potatoes from scratch. Sliced raw potatoes layered in a buttered casserole with cream, sharp cheddar, and onion, baked low and slow for over an hour until the cream thickened into sauce. The potatoes turned silk soft, and the top formed a browned, blistered crust of cheese that people fought over. Steakhouse kitchens built these in giant hotel pans every afternoon, and the smell of them baking was the smell of the dinner rush coming. Potatoes, a dime's worth. Cheese and cream, maybe 30 cents a pan. The finished dish sold by the ramekin for half $1, and there was never any left by 9 o'clock. Then came the box, dehydrated potato slices and a foil envelope of cheese-flavored powder. Add water and butter, a product that colonized both home kitchens and chain restaurants in the same decade. The boxed version tastes like salt and orange. The real version tastes like the best thing your grandmother ever pulled out of an oven. They share a name and nothing else, and an entire generation grew up knowing only the imposter. Number 6. The baked potato, done the old way. Yes, the baked potato survived, but not the way it used to be. The old steakhouses baked huge russets in the oven, no foil, so the skin dried into a crackling, salted shell, while the inside steamed fluffy. It arrived split and squeezed open, and then came the cart. Whipped butter, real sour cream, chopped chives, and bacon crumbled from actual bacon that a human being fried that morning. Some houses rolled the toppings to your table and dressed the potato in front of you like a ceremony, because it was one. The potato cost the house 4 cents. The ceremony cost nothing. The chains kept the potato and gutted the ritual. Foil-wrapped potatoes held for hours in warmers until the skin turned soggy and the inside went dense and gluey. Sour cream from a gun, bacon bits from a plastic jar, some of them containing no bacon whatsoever. Read that label sometime. The potato survived the chains the way a house survives a flood. Still standing, ruined inside. Number 5. The twice-baked potato. If the baked potato was the everyday, the twice-baked was the Sunday best. The kitchen baked the russet, scooped out the flesh, whipped it with butter, sour cream, cheddar, and chives, mounded it back into the crisped skin, topped it with more cheese, and ran it through the oven again until the peaks browned like a meringue. It was a potato that had been worked on, fussed over, built. Steakhouses charged double the plain potato for it, and people paid gladly because you could see the labor sitting right there on your plate. It cost the kitchen maybe 8 cents and 10 minutes in hands. The chains found their workaround. Frozen twice-baked potatoes, machine-filled, shipped hard as hockey pucks, reheated to a uniform lukewarm, extruded rather than mounded, never quite hot at the center. A dish invented to showcase care became a dish that demonstrates its absence. Most people under 40 have never eaten a real one. That is not their fault, but it is somebody's. Number 4. The iceberg wedge with real blue cheese. Today the wedge is back on trendy menus for $16, and they act like they invented it. Your grandfather ate it in 1955 for 35 cents, and his was better. A quarter head of iceberg, cold enough to hurt your teeth, drenched in a dressing made in-house from real crumbled blue cheese, sour cream, buttermilk, and a shot of Worcestershire, thick enough to cling to every ridge of the lettuce. The whole point was contrast. Ice-cold, watery crunch against rich, funky, salty cream, right before a hot slab of beef. Blue cheese cost real money, which is why the dressing was the pride of the house and why recipes were guarded like safe combinations. Then the chains swapped the crumbled wheel for bottled dressing, a smooth white sauce with blue-gray flecks and a chemical tang poured from gallon jugs. The wedge slid off menus by the 1990s, dismissed as dated, and iceberg itself became a punchline. The lettuce was never the problem. The jug was the problem. It was always the jug. Number 3. The tableside Caesar. Here is the one that required nerve. In its mid-century glory, the Caesar salad was not a menu item, it was a performance. The captain rolled a cart to your table carrying a big wooden bowl and built the dressing in front of you from scratch. Garlic crushed against the wood, anchovies mashed to a paste, mustard, Worcestershire, lemon squeezed by hand, olive oil in a thin stream, and then the move that made the whole room watch. A raw or coddled egg cracked in and whisked until the dressing turned glossy. Whole romaine, leaves tossed until coated, croutons cut from real bread, cheese grated over the top in a snowfall. The salad born in Tijuana in the 1920s had become, by the 1950s, the greatest show in American dining. Then food safety panic over raw eggs, the death of the captain's cart, and the chains' discovery of gallon jugs of shelf-stable Caesar dressing killed it in a single generation. What we call Caesar salad now, bagged romaine and jug dressing, is a photocopy of a photocopy. The original was theater. We turned it into a side you add chicken to. Number 2. Creamed spinach from scratch, the king of steakhouse sides, and the one the chains most completely hollowed out. Real creamed spinach started with fresh spinach, cases of it, washed leaf by leaf, blanched, squeezed dry by hand, and chopped. Then a cook made a proper cream sauce, butter, flour, whole milk and cream, seasoned with nutmeg, garlic, and sometimes a whisper of anchovy or bacon fat, and folded the spinach in until the whole pot turned a deep, luxurious green. The legendary steakhouses built their reputations on it. Regulars judged a house by its creamed spinach, the way wine people judge a list, and the great old rooms in New York and Chicago sold it by the ton. Spinach was cheap, the labor was not, and the labor was the flavor. The frozen boil-in-bag version that conquered chain menus in the 1970s is spinach in white library paste. No nutmeg, no depth, no soul. Held in a steam well since 4 o'clock. Same 2 words on the menu. And an entire country slowly forgot that creamed spinach was ever something you could crave. Number 1. The relish tray. The meal began before you ordered a single thing. The moment you sat down, a tray arrived, sometimes silver, sometimes a lazy Susan spinning in the middle of the table, packed with crushed ice and loaded with celery sticks, radish roses, carrot curls, green olives, black olives, sweet gherkins, pickled watermelon rind, spiced crab apples, scallions, and in the Wisconsin supper clubs, little cups of liver pate and cheese spread with crackers. It was free, a gift, a welcome, a way of saying you are our guest and we are glad you came, rendered in vegetables and ice. Families remember the relish tray more vividly than the steaks. Kids built entire rituals around who got the last radish. And it was the first thing the accountants killed, because a free tray of hand-cut vegetables at every table is a cost with no line item revenue. And by the 1980s, it was gone from all but a stubborn handful of supper clubs in the upper Midwest. The relish tray was never about the radishes. It was hospitality you could eat. When it disappeared, something bigger disappeared with it. The idea that a restaurant owed you a welcome before it earned your money. That is the real thing the chains cheapened, not the sides, the welcome. Here is my challenge. This week, bring one of these back at your own table. Make the hot bacon dressing. Whip real blue cheese into real sour cream. Build a relish tray on crushed ice for Sunday dinner and watch what happens to the conversation. Then come back and tell me if I am wrong. Drop the one you are making in the comments. I want to see if the onion loaf gets more love than the creamed spinach. And I want to hear from anyone whose family still passes a relish tray. Because these were never just side dishes. They were proof that somebody in the kitchen cared. Your grandparents got that with a $2 steak. Now you know what got taken.